Good morning and thank you for joining in today's RTA webinar, Starting of a Tenancy. My name is Lynn Smith. The RTA is presenting a series of educational webinars to help you understand Queensland tenancy laws. Today's webinar will run for approximately 30 minutes. If you would like to submit a question throughout the webinar, please expand the arrow on your screen and the question box to submit your questions. I will also attempt to answer as many as I can either during or at the end of the session. During the webinar, we'll also launch a couple of polls and we'll appreciate your participation to answer these questions as we go through. So about today's session, we're going to be looking at before a tenancy starts, the basic rights and responsibilities, paperwork that's required at the start of the tenancy, special terms, rent and rent ledgers, what other legislation is involved with renting properties, and where to get help. And again, as I said, we will look at also the questions that's been submitted throughout the session as well. But just before I do start, I'm going to launch a poll just to gather and see who we have in our audience today. So just bear with me. So the poll that I'm asking is, which group in the rental sector do you identify with in relation to, are you a property manager or agent, a tenant resident, a landlord, a community housing or support organisation, or an other? I'll just give that one moment for everyone just to jump on board and vote. Great, thanks everybody. So it looks like a majority of our attendees today are sitting around with property managers and agents and landlords and also community housing and supporting groups. So I'll just close that poll. Before a tenancy commences, it is important to note that the Residential Tenancies and Rooming Accommodation Act 2008 does not cover the tenancy selection process or the application process. While many agents and landlords will have various methods with their application process, it usually will include a part for identification, and in some points it may be 100-point ID process, and it also is looking for references or information to support the tenancy application. The agent or the landlord is looking for the tenant's ability to care and maintain the rental property, and also the ability to pay or afford to pay the rent. Landlords and managers should also have an awareness of the privacy laws and also the anti-discrimination laws. For one part of our Act does have a section where it does relate to before a tenancy commences, and that is Section 58. The prospective tenant must be given a copy of the proposed tenancy agreement before the tenant is being committed to the tenancy. This is only for general tenancies. And before the tenant is committed, what that means is before they pay any money or before they sign any agreement. So the proposed agreement should be completed except for like a name and a start date, and any attachments such as body corporate bylaws should also be included. By giving the prospective tenant a copy of the proposed agreement, this will give them the opportunity to read and understand what the terms are, how a rent will be paid, and any special terms. It's also an opportunity to clarify any questions that may be asked prior to signing or the commencement of the tenancy. There is also an obligation for agents and lessors who access tenancy databases. They must inform prospective tenants of which tenancy databases they are using, if they have found a listing, and how the tenant can contact the database company, and also how the tenant can have it amended or removed. There is more information on the tenancy database and obligations, and that can be found on the RTA's website. The skill set for Successful Tenancies Dollars and Cents program is a new free tenancy training program to help educate tenants about important tenancy and life skills required to rent a rental property. The program is being delivered by the Tenancy Skills Institute and funded by the Queensland Government. The training consists of 4 modules. It's communication, tenants' rights and responsibilities, cleaning and maintenance, and also finances and budgeting. The program is available for anyone who's had difficulty getting into a rental property or keeping or sustaining a tenancy. in particular young people who may not have a rental history or rental references. This 10 hours of competency-based tenancy training skills will give them information on their rights and responsibilities, and also a certificate upon completion which could go towards their rental application. This program is free and is being launched across the whole of Queensland. So for more information, please visit the tenancyskills.com.au, where you can also find an email and phone contact details. The Residential Tenancies and Room Accommodation Act 2008 covers three main types of tenancies. You have general tenancies, so these are the flats, houses, units, townhouses, granny flats and houseboats. You have movable dwellings, so these are for the tenancies in caravan parks, so whether you rent a van or a site or rent both in a caravan park. And this does not include the manufactured homes tenancies. We also have rooming accommodations, so for where it is renting a room only and you have shared facilities such as boarding houses, supported accommodation or purpose-built student accommodation. It's important to acknowledge the terminology is different between general tenancies and rooming accommodation, and the timeframe and some of the requirements for the tenancies are also very different. Just a further note that the Act does not cover boarders and lodgers, and also where it is rooming accommodation where there are 3 or less rooms and the owner lives on the property. It also doesn't cover educational institutions, commercial leasing, manufactured homes, and the first 13 weeks of approved supported accommodation and temporary refuge accommodation. While these areas are not covered, it would always be good practice to ensure when you have a leasing agreement, that it sets out and clarifies the expectations to avoid any confusion. For lessors and managers, their basic rights and responsibilities include ensuring the property complies with local council requirements and health and safety laws, carrying out repairs and maintenance and ensuring that this is done in a reasonable time, respecting the tenant's privacy and comply with the entry requirements as per the legislation, and the Act will actually outline the rules including the reasons of entry, when you can enter and the time frame for notice for enter. Make sure that you complete the tenancy forms carefully and keep copies. This could also be digital or paper records, not just at the start, but during the tenancy as well as for any notices that may actually be served. Keep to the terms of the tenancy agreement, lodge the bond with the RTA. There are options available to lodge the bond, and I will go through this shortly, along with the new option of the online bond lodgement process. Know your rights and responsibilities. Education and communication is the key to successful tenancies. So for tenants and residents, their rights and responsibilities is to make sure that they pay rent on time. There's also to keep the place clean, tidy and not cause damage. Respect the neighbour's right to peace and quiet. Keep to the terms of the tenancy agreement. And again, keep copies of all tenancy paperwork. It's important for everyone in a tenancy to ensure that they keep all their paperwork in an easy to locate and safe area. Notify the lessor or the agent of any repairs that's required, and leave the property in the same condition it was at the start of the tenancy, less spare wear and tear. Know your rights and responsibilities, and again, good respectful communication, good documentation throughout the tenancy is important for both sides. For the paperwork that's required at the start of tenancy, and I will go through each of these items in detail shortly, it's important to make sure that you get all the documentation right. While a tenancy can be verbal, written or implied, the Residential Tenancies and Room Accommodation Act does require written agreements. This also ensures that everyone understands their obligations during the tenancy and also what the terms are. You have the entry condition report, and that's a requirement under general tenancy to be completed, and only in rooming accommodation if you take a bond. The information statement, also known as the pocket guide for tenants, and if you do take a rental bond according to the Act, you will need to be lodging that bond with the RTA. Other additional documentation may include body corporate bylaws, park rules and house rules. But just before I do continue, I'm just going to launch another poll. So in this poll, I'm just asking a quick question. What problems do you see at the start of a tenancy? And in this, we actually have not providing or receiving all the documentation, the entry condition report, special terms, or not reading or understanding the agreement. So I'll just give everyone just a moment to jump on board and complete that poll for me. Great. So I'll just leave that for just a moment more. If everyone could please just jump on and complete the poll in relation to what you see as being the problems at the start of a tenancy. Okay, I'll close that poll just so that everyone has an understanding of what people have responded. It looks like a lot of people have said not reading or understanding the agreement, and also to the second highest one is actually not providing or receiving the documentation and also the entry condition report. Thank you everybody for completing that. I really appreciate that. So for the entry condition report, besides the tenancy agreement, the entry condition report is a very important document to complete at the start. Under section 65 and under 81 of the Act, it outlines the process and requirements regarding the entry condition report. It states for general tenancies that the lessor or agent needs to complete the form and sign it and provide the copy to the tenant at the start of the tenancy. The tenant then needs to go through the report, make any comments, sign it and return it to the agent or lessor within 3 days. The agent or lessor must return a copy of the report to the tenant within 14 days, and the RTA forms are all available to download from the RTA's website. Under section 188(4) of the Act, it states that the tenant's obligations, and that is to return the property in the same condition it was at the start of the tenancy, less fair wear and tear. This document records what the condition of the property is at the start. It's important to take the time and be thorough, attach any documentation or evidence that may be required to support the condition of the property. Photos are also recommended. By completing this report, it gives both sides of the tenancy an opportunity to record any pre-existing damage or whether things are clean or not clean or whether they're working or not. Remember, this report is compared to the exit condition report at the end of the tenancy. The RTA has 2 short videos available on our website, one for landlords and managers and one for tenants regarding the entry condition report, and we welcome you to view this or have your tenants view this. The RTA's dispute resolution service received around 28,000 disputes last financial year, and 52% of those were bond-related matters. So again, good communication, good documentation between the agents, landlords and the tenants, and communicating regularly and respectfully with clear evidence at the start and the end can avoid these matters escalating. Under section 67 of the Act, an information statement is to be given to the tenant at the start of a tenancy. This is also known as the Pocket Guide for Tenants and can be downloaded from the RTA's website or emailed to the tenant as a PDF. Please also note that the Pocket Guide for General Tenancies is also available in other languages. So that's for Chinese, both traditional and simplified, Arabic, Spanish, Korean, Vietnamese and Japanese. Note that the Pocket Guide is not applicable to rooming agreements. However, if under rooming accommodation you decide to opt into general tenancies, then you would be required to follow the rules and provide a Pocket Guide. Just to show everybody where you can actually find the, where you can find to download all our forms on the RTA's website, forms and resources for general tenancies or for rooming. Go down, click on the PDF, open up the PDF, and there you can actually view the Pocket Guide. Any additional documentation that may be required at the start. If the property is in a body corporate complex, then there may be bylaws applicable. It's important that the lessor or the agent provides the correct bylaws that's applicable to that particular complex. These bylaws then form part of the tenancy agreement. So if the bylaw is breached, then the tenancy agreement is also breached. For rooming accommodation, there are house rules. So the provider can have prescribed rules and also rules made by them. These include things such as the share facilities and the use of that, parking, smoking, pets, and also guests. And for tenancies in a caravan park, there will also be park rules. So I'm just going to come up to the lodging of the bond. And under Section 116 of the Residential Tenancies and Room Accommodation Act, if a bond is taken under the tenancy, it needs to be lodged with the RTA within 10 days of receipt. For agents, best practice would be to ensure you are lodging at least weekly and not just the end or mid of end of month as part of your practices to make sure that you meet this time frame. There are options available to lodge a bond. There is the new online bond lodgement. It's a new and convenient way to lodge a single bond, and I'm going to step through this process in more detail shortly. And payment can be made by credit card, debit card or BPay. Also through our website, you can also scan a form and upload that and pay with a BPay, or you can still use the paper-based form and send a cheque or money order to the RTA. So with the new online bond lodgement, this is an exciting and new way to lodge a single bond with the RTA. So anyone that's in a party to the bond can lodge a bond with the RTA. And while the majority of lodgements will come through agents and landlords, we still do have lodgements done directly from tenants. This is the start of the RTA having forms online. And the RTA is working on a gateway soon to actually be able to help agents lodge multiple bonds, and we'll be releasing more information later on that. Just a quick questions come through, we're just clarifying if that's 10 business days or 10 days. The Act is actually just 10 days, not business days. This new digital channel provides customers with a more flexible and convenient way to transact with the RTA. And it's a simple 4-step process. You need to accept the terms and conditions first, verify your identity online through the QGov channel, complete the online lodgement details, and then pay the rental bond by way of direct debit, a debit card, credit card or BPay. I'm just going to quickly show a very short video and demonstrate just a snippet of the video on what this looks like in relation to the QGov registration for your identification. As a tip before starting the whole process, it would be a good idea to have your identification ready to go, so driver's license, passport or Medicare card, and also to have a copy of your tenancy or rooming agreement handy with all the information that's required for the tenancy. And again, also have your credit card or get ready to write down the BPay particulars. So this is just a demonstration in relation to the registration side of things for the online forms. And this is just a demonstration in what this actually looks like in relation to the lodgement side of things. So again, there's drop-down boxes to complete the information. All the information that we're asking on this is in relation to all the information we would normally receive as part of a lodgement. Okay. The online forms is available on the RTA website now and has extra information available. Look, it's a quick guide for property owners and managers, and also there's a quick guide for tenants. On the RTA's website, you'll also find a large list of frequently asked questions, and we would welcome you to view these, as as part of our process, we've been able to actually make sure that we gather a lot of information on the consultation side that's actually been able to form a lot of our questions, the answers to those questions. As I said before, this is the start of the RTA having online forms available for all our customers. So the tenancy or rooming agreement is an important document, and parties should ensure they take the opportunity to understand what they are signing. A couple of months ago, the RTA refreshed the tenancy agreements and removed the requirement for witness signatures. So this is allowing electronic signatures and allows parties a more convenient way to have the agreements signed. So when completing this important contract, double check spelling, dates, amounts, and all the contact details, just to make sure that they are accurate. If an email address for serving a notice has been agreed between both the tenant and the manager or the owner, ensure it is the correct email address. Should this change during the tenancy, then parties will need to notify the other of any changes, and it would be recommended to put that in writing. The tenancy or rooming agreement will outline where rent details, where the rent payments is, the details, how much, when it's due, the method and where. And for general tenancies, it's important to put down emergency contact details. So in case for the after hours emergencies, such as a burst pipe or electrical safety fault, that the tenant understands who they can contact. So just following through on the agreement, just going to talk about special terms. So the tenancy and rooming agreements have two main parts. The first part is the standard terms, and also there's an opportunity then to have special terms. I'd like to point out there's two sections of our legislation to keep in mind in relation to special terms. So section 53 is contracting out is prohibited. So this means that the agreement or any arrangement is void to the extent for which it purports to exclude, change or restrict the application of the Act. It further states that a person must not enter into an agreement or an arrangement with the choice to actually evade or prevent the operation of the Act. And sections 171 and 176, a person must not require another person to agree to buy goods or services from the lessor or lessor's agent or a nominated supplier. So to give you an example of some of the unlawful clauses that our investigation area has seen. So if you are insisting the tenant buy professional clean services or carpet clean or any other cleaning when the cleaning was not done at the start, or ensuring that they must purchase these services as a condition of their tenancy or to use a particular provider. And again, keep in mind the tenant is to return the property in the same condition it was at the start of the tenancy. So if the carpets were steam cleaned at the start, then yes, you can ask the tenant to be steam cleaning the carpets at the end of the tenancy. How they do that is up to the tenant, but they must be returning the property in the same condition it was at the start of the tenancy, less fair wear and tear. Obviously, you would be stating what that condition is in your entry condition report, being very thorough, very detailed, and provide any supporting evidence as into what that condition is about. Also too, we've seen insisting a term in an agreement that states that the tenant must agree to open house inspections at the end of the tenancy. So under section 204 of the Act, the lessor or lessor's agent must not conduct open houses or on-site auctions without the tenant's consent. The tenant must agree to this in writing when informed of the particulars. So changing timeframes of giving notice. So as an example, if you have a clause that states the tenant will give you a month's notice to vacate, then you would be contracting outside the Act, because that is not the time frame that is written in the Act, where the tenant is only required to give 2 weeks notice. We have also seen changes where people have put changes to the rules of entry and changing timeframes, and also the frequency of entry as well. The RTA has a video on our website and also available on YouTube, which is looking up the RTA Queensland in full. We would recommend viewing this video if you not already have seen it, just to ensure that you are doing the right things regarding your special terms. Further note that for agents, there's also the Legal Professions Act 2007, where parties to an agreement can write a special term or a legal representative. So for the RTA has over the past year carried out quite a few prosecutions to real estate agents and landlords for unlawful special terms. You can read those articles on some of the prosecutions through the RTA's newsroom. Just as a friendly reminder, just please ensure that you're very careful as to the special terms you're inserting in your tenancy and rooming agreement, as penalties do apply if you do breach this. For rent and rent ledgers, so it's between sections 83 and 109 are all the sections relating to rent. The Act outlines that the tenant must pay the rent in an approved way. The Act outlines what an approved way is, and that's cash, cheque, deposit to a financial institution account, credit card or EFTPOS system, or a deduction from a pay or pension, or any other agreed way by the lessor or the tenant. If you fall into that latter category and you have an agreed way, such as your rent cards, then you will need to offer the tenant a choice of at least 2 other approved ways for payment. Any associated costs with paying the rent must also be advised to the tenant, and also note that a money order has not been listed as an approved way. So I'd also point out that should, after signing the agreement, the lessor or the tenant gives the other party a notice saying that there's a different approved way that is proposed, then the other party must agree in writing. So that's an important part to note, particularly if there's been a change of rent roll from one agent to another. And the Act also states that the lessor or agent must keep a record for the rent for 1 year after the tenancy has ended. And also too, if during or at the end of the tenancy, the tenant asks for a copy of their rent record, then the lessor or the agent must provide that within 7 days. Just to give you an example of what a rent ledger is, because we do get a lot of landlords inquiring about this side of it. So I've highlighted the circle part here and ensuring that what you're looking at is the date the rent's paid, the amount that's paid, and the period that it actually covers. And where the asterisk is in that red circle, you'll see that the rent was actually due on the 29th of May, but it was paid late. And even though the period that it's going to cover, even though it was paid late, actually has the flow on cover dates as per the period rent that is covered, which would be the 29th of May to the 11th of June. So what other legislation is involved in a renting property? So the Residential Tenancy Rooming Accommodation Act Section 185 states at the start of the tenancy, the lessor must not be in breach of any health or safety laws, and also too, while the tenancy continues, they must comply with those laws and also carry out repairs. But there's other legislation that comes into play, and that's going to include council rules and building codes applicable to Queensland, the pool laws, and this is in relation to fences and safety barriers. This was actually introduced in 2009. Information on the pool laws can be found on the Department of Housing and Public Works website. So that's hpw.qld.gov.au. Smoke alarms, we would refer you to the Queensland Fire and Emergency Services website. They have a lot of information, and in particular, the fact that there is new legislation that's in place. And that legislation specifies that all the Queensland dwellings will be required to have interconnected photoelectric smoke alarms in all bedrooms, hallways that connect the bedrooms, and the rest of the dwelling on every level. So this has been done through a phased out process. And it commenced on 1 January 2017. But noting too that by 1 January 22, all domestic dwellings that are being leased or sold will be required to be compliant with these new laws. So just as a reminder that this is actually coming up, and that most properties, well, all properties will need to be compliant with those requirements. You also have the safety switches, so all residential properties in Queensland must be fitted with a working safety switch as per the Electrical Safety Act 2002. If you are renting or have a property in a body corporate complex, then you'll also have the Body Corporate and Community Management Act 97, and we'd refer you to the Body Corporate Commissioner's website through the Department of Justice for information on the body corporate. For real estate agents, there's other legislation through the Office of Fair Trading, which is your Property Occupation Act 2014 and the Agents Financial Administration Act as well. So the RTA has a lot of helpful resources available. So we have the information statement for tenants, so you can either print or download and email the PDF from the RTA's website. There's the Managing General Tenancies, Rooming Accommodation and Movable Dwelling Tenancy booklets. These can also be downloaded from the website. I think they're a great tool if you have are managing properties, as they have key sections of the Act, key topics, examples and flow charts in relation to managing a rental. The RTA also has videos and webinars, and we'll be also continuing with future digital education, and that's going to be including podcasts in the upcoming 12 months. Please make sure that you have registered to receive the RTA news articles from the newsroom, and to do that you just go to the RTA website. In the top right hand corner of the website you'll see RTA news email sign up. The RTA's website has, as I said, a lot of information in relation to all parts of the tenancy, whether it's the start, during or the end of a tenancy, and also have printable friendly fact sheets available as well. So if you can also seek information through industry support. So no matter which side in the tenancy you are, you can also have advocacy support for landlords through the Property Owners Association of Queensland. For real estate agents, the REIQ, and for tenants, you have access to Tenants Queensland or Q-Stars. So again, remember the RTA is here to have everyone involved in a tenancy, and that's our website details and also our 1300 number. I'm going to run through some of the questions, and we do have a lot of questions because we actually have quite a few hundred people in today's webinar. So I'm going to just go through, there's quite a few themed questions that's coming through and in relation to the online bond lodgement. So I will talk about that in a moment as well. But if I haven't answered your question and you do need an immediate answer, please contact our 1300 number where one of our friendly staff can also assist you. Just also to note, at the end of the webinar, when I close it, there will be a short survey that's going to appear, and we really do appreciate your feedback, and particularly what topics you would like to know more about. So I'm just going to get through to the questions. So how long before our agency is notified of a lodgement if it's done by a tenant? As an agency, you'd receive an acknowledgement of the bond when the payment has been cleared, so pretty well nearly straight away. So literally if someone is paying by credit card, that payment would actually be going through literally straight away, so you would be notified as soon as that payment is cleared. One of the questions in relation to clarifying about the rules about how many keys are required to be given to a tenant at the start. And that is that the Act actually outlines that if there's multiple names on a tenancy agreement, then at least one tenant has a full complete set. So that would be like, you know, every door, every letterbox and entries and things like that. And for every other subsequent tenant named on the agreement, they would then have an accessible set. So if an accessible set means that they need a security screen and a front door and a deadlock or something, so if they require 3 keys to gain access, then they would require that as well. There's quite a few questions in relation to water charging, and I think we might leave that to another topic, but we do have information on our website about water charging, and if you can charge your tenant a water bill, yes you can, but there's rules in relation to when and how they can actually be charged. So one of the other questions that's coming through is a significant amount of people are asking what happens when the tenant doesn't return the entry condition report. And that does actually happen. And what we would suggest is, again, that really good communication and talking to the tenant and reminding them that it's due. The requirement in our legislation says that the tenant will return the property back within 3 days, the report back within 3 days. So again, contacting the tenant and actually ensuring, and again, probably putting things in writing as well to the tenant, just to make sure that they understand the requirements of the legislation that they do sign it, and it's also their opportunity to, again, record any of that pre-existing damage. So what happens, another one here is, what happens if I take over a management with incorrect special terms? I think actually if you could look at that video that we actually have on the RTA's website, it does actually go through in relation to the special terms, and we actually do a scenario on that. But realistically, you would need to be correcting that and making sure that you're not enforcing those incorrect or unlawful special terms. whether that means that you need to be writing to the tenants that's involved with any of those agreements, or whether you're looking to renew those agreements. And also to ensuring, again, that you've instructed your landlord's clients about what their requirements is in relation to the legislation about not putting those unlawful clauses in the agreements. Another question is, what happens if the tenant and I both agree to 1 month's notice? And again, I think I've actually gone through that before, where you, even though you may agree, literally you cannot put that as a clause in your agreement because you are contracting outside the legislation. More questions in relation to the bond side of thing. So if you are looking to lodge multiple bonds, will the online lodgement form process be available for that? And as said before, it's only at this point for single bond lodgements. However, the RTA is continuing to work on developing a product that does meet the agents in being able to lodge those multiple bonds. So another question is if the pocket guides are updated. They were updated earlier this year, and again, it's always a good idea to make sure that you are using the latest forms, and again, getting those details off the RTA's website as well. One of the other things is, can a landlord ask for their rent ledger? I would guess in relation to that, that's the agent and the landlord to actually talk through that in relation to, they would actually get at the end of every month, I would assume, a statement from the agent saying what rent is paid and what's being covered. So I think that's actually covered under the agent's obligations in relation to their trust account, what they have to do in dispersing money, and also a statement as well. One of the questions is, does the entry condition board have to have photos? It doesn't have to have photos, but it's probably a very good idea to include photography. And again, it's just adding that extra information to support your document to ensure that there is evidence to say what that condition of the property is about. There's also a lot of questions that I've raised because I've mentioned the smoke alarm laws. When does the new legislation start? Well, the legislation actually started on 1 January 2017, and that was more focused for like new properties and been and also very largely developed or renovated properties as well. But as of 1 January 2022, all rental properties and any properties being sold will need to make sure that they are compliant with the smoke alarm laws. And again, if you go to Queensland Emergency and Fire Services website, there is a lot of information that they have available about the smoke alarm laws. So again, it started 2017, 2022. It doesn't leave a lot of time. I am aware that some real estate agents have started going through their rent roll and gradually starting to implement the changes of the smoke alarms. And again, making sure that everybody needs to be involved in making sure that they are compliant by the end of 2021. There will be a copy of this webinar available on the RTA's website over the coming weeks. We have run over time. I do appreciate that you stayed with us for this time, and again, thank you very much for those questions. If I haven't been able to get to your questions, again, either there is information on our website that may be able to cover this, or again, please ring our friendly staff on our 1300 number and they will be able to assist you. Again, please stay on for the survey that's about to appear. And again, thanks very much for your participation today in today's webinar.